Brian from RackATiers Manufacturing, bringing you the Inventor's Corner. Today we're going to talk to another one of our inventors, Mitch Collins. He invented the TrunkTie. Mitch is going to tell us how he got started, some of the challenges along the way, and he's going to also talk to us about the importance of patents and also some resources that you can reach out to and some of the things he did to gain information and knowledge on his journey to bring a product to market. So let's grab our coffees, go and talk to Mitch and see what he has to say today. Hey Mitch, how's it going? Good morning.
All right.
How are you today?
Good. How are you doing this morning, Brian?
I'm doing pretty good. I tell you, I need more coffee. That's what I really need.
Yeah.
It's pouring rain here. It's gray. It's gloomy. I'm just like, it's terrible. You got another sunny San Diego day?
It's same day every day here in San Diego.
Oh man.
No need for a weather report. It never changes. Always
dirty
beautiful.
Dog. It's so nice. So nice. Yeah. So just wanted to get together with you, have a small conversation about how we kind of all got started. You and I met at was it a Bixie trade show, Mick?
Yeah.
You were at Bixie at the low voltage show. I had a booth there. You came by, and you had a big bag of these in your hand.
Yeah.
And you went,
always.
Hey man, you should check this out. This is kind of cool. Nobody's doing this. And I went, what the heck's that? I think that's what I said, like a dummy. But yeah. So then we went from there. You were already at that point. So that's where I met you. You had production already going. You were already selling some yourself through your website and online, right?
Yeah. I think it was the half a year earlier, the previous Bixie, or maybe I guess the 1 year before previous Bixie, it had come out the week before. So I went to that show, walked around and talked to a lot of people. And by the way, that's kind of, we're talking to a lot of people who might be just starting off and inventing or starting a product. That is my stealth marketing way. I go to a lot of trade shows and people see my badge. They say, oh, TrunkTie, what do you do? And I pull a bunch of those out of my pocket and I say, let me show you what I do.
Yeah.
That is my stealth technique to show those off. That's how we do it.
Right. So how did this kind of come about? Now you work in IT, and how did this kind of happen for you, Mitch? Like where did this start? How did that vision go?
Yeah, for me it was definitely it was just something I needed and wanted to buy. I didn't set out to become an inventor. So I work in IT. I was IT manager for a very large company, the Fortune 25. And every Thursday, the HR department would send me an email that said, these are your new employees that are starting next Monday. We need their cubicles, their office, whatever, that we need the jack activated. Normally in a big corporate environment, you don't leave activated jacks anywhere that someone could just plug any computer into. So I would need to send somebody to plug and patch it in. So what that means, right, for those people that aren't in IT or low voltage stuff, you have a patch panel, something like this. And although this has numbers that might correspond to something, the reality is after things have been installed for a while, these don't correspond to anything. And very, very rarely are they labeled. So what would happen is I would give a list of the Monday starts to one of my network engineers, and he would walk around with a tone and probe. And we were in a pretty large multi-building campus, and he would go plug this into a cubicle, walk back to the data center, and then he would just plug this probe into each port until one of them made a tone, and then he'd say, okay, that's the one that I just need to plug the wire into, right? Just patch it in. Well, that's tedious. So I had very senior, very skilled network engineers that have tasks, responsibilities for sites all over the world, spending 4 or 5 hours every Friday just identifying a port and plugging in a wire. Wow. Really simple task, just because they weren't labeled.
Yeah.
So as the manager and the guy who knew what we were paying for an hour of their time or how much their salary worked out to, I kept trying to go on and buy something. I could completely picture what it was, but it just didn't exist.
Right.
Long story short, eventually I looked it up and actually went on the patent office site, looked around and found that there was nothing at all like this. I mean, it is very unique. And even though the first comment most people say is, are you sure that didn't already exist? Because it's it seems like something that there's been a need for so long? The answer is no, it didn't exist. So I had to invent it. So for me, it was all about need. I wasn't setting out, hey, I want to become an inventor. It was, hey, I wish I wasn't wasting 5 hours a week of an engineer's time.
Yeah. Huh, that's interesting. So you really you came up, you had you said, hey, I need some sort of a labeling system. You went to check out you just used Google and Amazon and all those kinds of things to start doing your research to try and find it, to buy it.
I tried to buy them. I tried over and over, and if they had existed, I would have ordered a ton of them. We would have labeled everything in one day and never have had to waste that time ever again. But it didn't exist at the time.
Right. So you went, okay, I think this is a good enough idea that I should do this, or you just were just got obsessive about it. Like, I mean, how do you go from you could have just went, meh, oh well, but you push through, right? You're like, is that is it a personality thing where you're just like, I gotta make this, or it's like, what happens there?
It evolved into that personality thing. The reality is, I didn't immediately say, okay, I can't buy these, I'm going to make them. I had a good job and I was happy where I was at. I did actually change and go to work for a different company, but that company fell on hard times and I got laid off. And when I was laid off, for some reason the idea came back, probably because I was talking to my brother, and he's a guy who's always got energy for a new idea as well. And that kind of inspired me, and we fueled off each other. And we said, why don't we work on it? And just in general, I'm always working on something. So for that period where I didn't have a job, I had a lot of energy that needed to go somewhere. And that's when I put it into the idea. So it was actually maybe 2 years or so after I had the initial idea that I went back and said, gosh, someone still hasn't come up with this idea and patented it. That's it. I'm going to be that guy.
So then you drew it up, you got the patent first. That was kind of like, did your designs, then you went and applied for a patent?
Yeah. Yeah. I really, I wanted to make sure that I could patent it. In this case, it's a simple device. It's not like, only the scientists at my company can produce one or anything. So if I couldn't get a patent on it, I would just assume I need them in my career, but I would just buy them from whatever many companies start making it if it was a sort of thing that was just out there in the open. So I started with the patent, and probably the best thing that came out of that first meeting with the patent attorney was I had searched online for different NDAs and things, and just working in contracts and such for.
So NDA is non-disclosure agreement?
Yes, yeah, sorry, non-disclosure agreements. Yeah, and I had signed quite a few working with big manufacturers and things. They tend to be big, long, tedious documents, and really, they don't need to be. So the first thing that came from that was my patent attorney gave me a 2-page NDA and said, don't speak to anyone unless they sign this. Don't feel uncomfortable. Don't feel like you're putting them out. This is what it means to be a professional. And it took me a little while. Wow. I was an IT guy, not a professional inventor, but it didn't take long to realize that people understand. And if they want to talk, they're willing to sign it, especially when it's just a 2-page thing where you basically put your company name, your name, and sign that you're not going to steal my idea. That was the most important thing that came out of that first meeting with the patent attorney, for sure.
Right. So would you say, just kind of like somebody who's starting out and they have an idea, so is really the first step then getting a non-disclosure agreement and Absolutely. Then going to the patent office? Because you probably, it sounds like you had to talk your idea through with your brother, with other people,
there was a small group of people that I had to bounce it off of to see, does it seem viable? It's important to me, and in my job I could see for sure I would use this, and there are so many other uses besides the use case that had me come up with the idea. But I needed to talk to a few other people and say, if this existed, would you use it? So yeah, I did sort of break that golden rule of don't tell anybody. So it's just important to know who you can trust, for sure. But I would limit that as much as possible.
Right. Yeah. Well, that makes sense, right? You don't want somebody stealing your idea.
Yeah.
So then you had to go, you went, okay, got that done. How long does that patent process take? Does it take a long time?
It does, and there are two types of patents. There's a design patent and a utility patent. Now, I'm far from a patent attorney. So if I say anything that is different than what people have heard from their patent attorneys, please go with their advice. But basically, I filed for both types. The design patent is really on the actual layout and the way something looks, and so it's easy to get around that by designing something different. You make something square, somebody else makes a round version, etc. But
Right.
that patent, it's fairly quick, maybe a year and a half for something that's not too complex. So I applied for that because I wanted to have a patent as soon as possible. However, like I said, that one is easier for a competitor to design around. The other type of patent it involves a lot more scrutiny, but it also gives you a lot more protection. So I filed for that as well, and that's a utility patent. The utility patent says this is what this device does. So it's about the function of the device. So one is about the form, one is about the function. The utility patents can take years. In fact, sometimes people have to renew their application.
Right.
Especially in some of, like, if you're applying in other countries besides the United States, you may have to renew year after year just while it's being reviewed.
Right. So then you got all through that. That's all out of the way. And then you went looking for somebody to do the injection molding. Is it made in, did you do that in San Diego where you live there, or?
Yeah, there's kind of two big things I discovered there. One, every single step of the way, because like I said, I'm an IT engineer, so I don't know about injection molding, I don't know about patents, I don't know. So every step of the way is a new learning experience, which for me is great. I love learning, so I've enjoyed every step of it. But I want to tell people out there that don't want to have to learn every single step. There are so many resources. A lot of them, in my case, I'm looking at them backwards, and so it's been more to help other people. But San Diego, for example, has a big community of inventors. San Diego Startup Group is phenomenal. A lot of other cities have similar groups. I've met an organization up in Irvine that helps people kind of get onto a good start if they're inventors. But as far as things like manufacturing, what I did meet with one company that is based in San Diego. They have a manufacturing plant in San Diego. They had very little interest in my particular product, and the reason is, and this is going to be a struggle for a lot of new inventors, the process for building tooling, putting tooling into an injection mold, and then making a run of the part, then cleaning it, taking it out, and putting in the next part that they're making for their next customer. That's a lot of work. So for something that is only going to run their machines for 12 hours, 24 hours, maybe even 2-3 days, it's hard for them to make money. So that the manufacturers are not as interested in a product like that as one that's going to keep their machine running for a month straight, and then they swap over to another product.
Just starting out, so you had to look at, okay, I only want to do a small batch to start.
Yeah. So if you're making, say, like a trunk tie, maybe you have a mold that makes 4 trunk ties, and say it takes a minute to make it. Well, if you're making 4 every minute, 240 an hour, it adds up pretty quickly, and it might be 16 or something in a mold, and then it really adds up quickly. So all the downtime between each product, between my product and then some other product that's being manufactured, means that a lot of companies really weren't interested in taking on TrunkTie in the early days when we were just making very small numbers.
Yeah.
So that's something that makes it a little bit more of a challenge for people starting off.
Wow.
Trying to build up that critical mass.
Yeah. So where do you find like the challenges that come along? Like, I guess every step you're indicated there's a challenge almost, because it's like forces learning. But it's like, where was the toughest spot in your journey before you got a product out onto where it has a UPC code and it's actually being sold, and you can see it online, you can find it in a catalog somewhere? It's like, what was your personal biggest challenge?
Honestly, it was there were 2 challenges, and they both come around to the same general problem. I I'm so passionate about this, and I like learning in general, that anything that I am the one that's holding it up, that's going to get done right away. So the two times where I really had to go to outside and I had to bring in expertise or bring in resources, those were the hardest things for me. And the one thing was money. When you're starting off, you can't afford to make any mistakes. And
Right.
the first trunk ties I made, the packaging, not the product at all. The product was perfect, but the packaging was the wrong shade of green, and the printer that made it, whatever ink they used, it runs. So as I was taking my very first ones ever that I want to show who people who've never seen this before, there were smears on the packaging. So
Oh,
I never sold those. I opened up the packages and used them for handing out samples and things. But when that's everything you can do to get onto the market, every penny you can scrape together, and you say, you know what, I want my stuff to be perfect, and I'm not going to sell these. That's tough. That means it takes many more months of saving up money or fundraising, bringing on an investor, whatever it may be, to basically remanufacture it all a second time. That was the most frustrating thing. And I still have several thousand bags that are just the wrong shade of green, just some of them a little smeared, but they're not up to my standards, even though the stuff inside the bag is perfect.
right.
That was kind of the biggest frustration and challenge, I think, for me.
Yeah.
The other one, you know, I would definitely say that. Yeah, that was the one that caused me the most grief by far.
Yeah. So when you delegate and it screws up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's exactly. My first manufacturing was, they took care of everything, and then I said, well, that's not quite the level I wanted. So I'm going to go to my local printer. I can literally walk in there and inspect things before I pick it up,
Yeah.
and say it meets my standards or doesn't.
So is the trunk ties made in the USA?
No, and there's a really interesting story that is definitely worth sharing, with any potential inventors out there. I used a site. The site I use is mfg.com. I'm sure there are plenty of others, but this is a site that some people might be familiar with. A site like a Odesk or a Fiverr or something, Upwork, where you can hire freelancers for things. Well, this is for hiring an entire manufacturing facility. You go there and you explain your job. And like I said, I was having a little trouble. I went to some plastics trade shows and met with manufacturing companies and such here in the US. And I met with quite a few. I met with a consortium out of one of the states that represents quite a few, and explained exactly what I wanted. And they're all very gracious and very nice. But when it came down to it and they realized, gosh, this guy wants, what we would manufacture in 18 hours and all the downtime at the beginning and the end, let's not even give them a quote. So it was very difficult to even find out what it would cost to make in the US. But I went to this website, and one of the things you can do when you put a job up for bid is you can check a box that says US companies only. And that was my goal. I wanted to at least know if I can make this a 100% made in America product. So I checked that off, and within hours I had 12 companies. I decided to cut it off there and talk to those first 12 and then see if I needed to talk to more. And as I talked with these companies, what I found was I actually got bids from 12 companies with 12 offices in the US and factories overseas.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh gee.
So that is something to be aware. That is the way business is done, apparently. Like I said, every single step of this is a learning experience for me. But they've turned out to be a very good partner. Things, especially when there's part in the US, part overseas, and part in various countries. It's been very challenging right now as a US based company to figure out what tariffs might be from various different companies, because things are changing constantly. It's forced me to learn a lot of things I never thought I would have to learn, both tariffs for manufacturing, and then we've now had sales in Canada and New Zealand, in Germany. So as I try to ship products, I'm having to learn about things like the harmonized tariff system, which I had never heard of until I became an inventor and a company and everything else.
Yeah. So it sounds like you go to a lot of trade shows. Like you would. So when you started looking for manufacturing, you went to some manufacturing trade shows. When you looking for product, like product ideas and IT, you went to IT trade shows back when you were doing that management stuff. And then when you finally had your product made, you went to low voltage trade shows to look for anybody who would be interested in buying your product.
Yes, I am a
You're a
huge.
trade show guy, man.
I am. Yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah,
have you ever had a booth at a trade show, or
I have not me personally.
like just
Like I
used
said,
it
I've worked
walking
for
around, just trying
actually.
to make contacts, networking is
Yeah, and I've been loosely associated with the booth a few times. I've worked for three. Well, one's not a U.S. company, but three that would be Fortune 500, three multi-billion-dollar companies. So those companies often have trade show booths, and at one or two times I've been IT support for a booth, or
yeah.
I've been there and visited my friends that are working a booth. But TrunkTie has never had a booth.
Right. So then you met me, and then we were like, hey, we're starting to do some stuff in low voltage. We'll bring you into our catalog, and you
Yeah.
talked to Ken and sorted out packaging, and that's and then we got you into the catalog. So now we bring you into the regular electrical world of distribution. So we're kind of handling that and touching into our low voltage customers as well.
I am
So
grateful
what's
for it.
do you have more things on in the back of your mind? You sound like you're a guy who's always solving little problems. It's just like, do you have any other inventions you can talk about at this time, or?
Not really. Now, within TrunkTie, I don't really call that a different invention, but there will be a big news. I haven't even shown it publicly. I showed you a prototype, but not many other people have seen it at all. But I will have a duplex LC fiber TrunkTie within a couple of months. It's being made right now, so by summer we'll have that.
Nice.
But I actually have invented several other things. So
Really?
I don't look at this as, wow, I'm going to be a rich inventor. That would be great. Who wouldn't want to be?
Right.
But my excitement is always, gosh, I've got 7 more ideas that are all over the board. They may or may not have anything to do with electrical or whatever. They're just ideas. The one thing they all have in common is just something that I find troublesome, or there's a lot of work. And gosh, I have an easier way to do this if only I could raise enough money to make this product. So I'm looking for this to enable the next invention, but I'm not ready to talk about any of those yet. I'm still saving up just to get the patents, but I will definitely be there.
Cool. So yeah, that sounds like quite fun. Yeah, well, any advice that you'd want to kind of like summarize, like if you went back and talked to yourself when you were at the beginning of the journey, it's like, is there anything that you would do different, or, it's like,
For sure. Yeah, there are some things that I love learning for learning's sake. So I didn't really mind taking on every single thing. But the reality is, if your goal is to start a product and get it on the market, there are some things that are just not a value add. The only one that I really did, and that, I don't know if I did it because it wasn't a value add for me. It was more because, frankly, I tried to do it and I was struggling. I'm not very creative. I had someone do my website for me.
oh,
But most other things I did myself, whether it was researching, tariffs instead of hiring an import person, and I don't have room for dedicated roles like that. There are a lot of things that you could get help from people without having to give up part of your company, without even having to tell them about your idea necessarily. A good place to start, like here in San Diego, I mentioned the San Diego Startup Group. Phenomenal, very supportive group of all people that are trying to start their own companies, whether they're writing software, creating a product, whatever it may be. Sometimes you can share resources or pool ideas, whatever it may be, with other groups. There are lots of groups for inventors. We have an inventors group here in San Diego. I've met some organizations based in Irvine that do that sort of thing.
yeah.
So I would say find the things that are not core to what you're doing and get help with it, right? If it's something that's just a matter of paying someone to do it, if you have the money to do it, because that means you're going to be able to focus on the things that are specific to your product. And if it's something that's not for money, or you don't have the money, find a group of peers that are willing to help out.
Cool. Well, thanks, Mitch. Really appreciate your time. That was really insightful. You had a lot of really great pointers, and great challenges that you've worked through. Obviously, quite successfully. You're very diligent. It sounds like, to be able to, go through all those step by steps, figure it out, learn it, and then be able to. And now you're expanding your family of offering, and bringing that to the market. Great talking to you. Good catching up with you again. Maybe we'll,
it's good catching up with you, Brian. It's great.
We'll have to. I'll send you the trade shows we're going to be at, and maybe come by. The trade show guy.
I'll probably be there.
You'll probably be there. Yeah. We'll have another coffee.
For sure.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, man.
Later.
Good talking to you.